Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and here we break down complex issues around health, the climate crisis, and social justice through a vegan lens. We'll talk about the magic link between your well being and the planet's health because luckily, choosing a healthier, mindful lifestyle for yourself often creates healthier vibes for our planet too. Staying consciously clueless means getting to show up knowing nothing, but staying open to all that you can learn. From feasting on plant-based meals and reducing waste to learning to meditate, every step you take contributes to your wellness and makes systematic change for the world. You can make a difference. This podcast will show you how. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to be chatting with you again.
It's good to be here, Carly. I'm excited to talk with you today.
You were an earlier guest on the show, which, as we were chatting beforehand, is already a couple years ago. So let's remind listeners or tell listeners for the first time who Miguel the vegan is, and we'll go from there.
The vegan is not my surname, as probably most of you. So my full name is a railroad, we say in Greek, because I was raised in Cyprus, where people speak Greek. So it's Sergio Miguel Caçador Yalorizis. I have a Portuguese surname and then a Greek one, but Miguel is fine. So yeah, it's been a couple of years since the last call. I don't remember exactly the year, but I was in Portugal back then, and now I'm located in Cyprus, where I grew up. It's a small island in the Mediterranean, for anyone who doesn't know. I have my own coaching business where I help people basically get the strongest and the fittest they can be on a plant-based diet. And I work with people who are either already plant-based or those who are interested in becoming plant-based and reducing their consumption of animal products.
So can you tell listeners what your own journey to veganism and plant-based eating was?
So I went plant-based, I went vegan in 2015. That's when I connected the dots that it didn't make sense to me to love animals or to say that I love animals and then proceed to pay to have other people kill them or torture and kill them. So it just made sense to me at that time. I'll explain why at that time. Maybe I was mature enough. Maybe I finally connected the dots, like I said. So it's been almost 9 years since then. And my coaching, it didn't happen right away. I was still working in a typical 9 to 5 job back then in the UK, in England. And then I slowly started realizing that an office job isn't for me. I started working remotely first because working from home is something I always admired and always wanted to do. But I was still working for a couple of jobs in the States and other companies around the world. It wasn't until 2019 that I decided that I'm gonna quit the safe job and try this out because I was 28 back then, and I thought I'm getting close to 30. If I'm not going to do this now, I'm never going to do it. If I don't try this now, it's going to be too late when I'm going to be maybe 40 or 50 to start a coaching business and finally make my passion my daily life and my work, which is exercise and nutrition. So since 2019, it's been now 5 years that I've been running my business. And like I said before, I work with people who are interested in going plant-based or who are already plant-based. It's all online because I work with people all around the world, and I have an application. Everything is done through the app. Lots of video calls, lots of back and forth messages, voice messages and video messages. And so far, I have to say that it's been really rewarding because I think when whatever type of job you have that helps people directly or indirectly in terms of their health, physical or mental health, I think it can be really rewarding.
So in the last 5 years, in terms of coaching and doing this work online, do you find that the curiosity and the interest in plant-based eating and veganism is growing?
I definitely have more clients than I had back then, but it's probably also because of the fact that I'm better at what I do now. The more years pass by, the better you become at your own craft. But in terms of overall, I would say interest in plant-based eating or veganism, I definitely see that has been growing. Where I was living before in Portugal, pretty much every week or every other week, there was a new vegan restaurant opening up in Lisbon. So
Wow.
that's a big city and lots of vegans there. So that's why it's the capital of Portugal. That plus people online or even people I know, acquaintances who are getting more interested in reducing or starting by, let's say, dropping meat or becoming a pescatarian. Even people from my family started reducing their animal product consumption gradually and slowly. So I definitely see an interest. I also online. I see the statistics in the UK. You have more and more people becoming vegan in the States. But I think it can be challenging for those who don't live in like big cities or who don't live in maybe Western countries. Of course, I might be wrong here, but I do see that there is a barrier to entry when it comes to people who live in small villages or in countries where, for example, tofu is not a mainstream thing, or tempeh has never been heard of, or stuff like that. For example, in my personal situation now, I'm in Cyprus, this small Mediterranean island. I'm lucky that it's a Mediterranean island because there's lots of, in the Mediterranean diet, there's lots of fish, of course, but also lots of beans like lentils and chickpeas and fava beans and tomatoes and vegetables and pita bread. You have all these already vegan, let's say, recipes by default, traditional recipes by vegan recipes by default. But I can see how it can be challenging if you are somewhere else where the diet is heavily based on meat, on dairy, maybe more northern countries, for example. But to come back to my situation and to also answer your question, here in Cyprus, I also see definitely an improvement in terms of how many people are going vegan and how many vegan options you have in restaurants, how many vegan restaurants are opening up. It's definitely been interesting to see this growth. It's really slow still. I think as vegans, we always would like for the world to go vegan tomorrow, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. We have to face reality, but it is changing slowly, step by step.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to appreciate change even when it feels painstakingly slow, right? The desire to want everything to change overnight isn't good for anybody, turns out, when you hold that inside or you project it on other people, right?
Yeah, I guess I understand where people come from. People who are already vegans who want their, I don't know, their partner or their
Totally.
parents or their friends to go vegan, and how can they not be? And they're my friends, they're my family, but chances are you are also not vegan from birth, or you also had years, probably decades of eating meat and eating animal products, and at some point you came to that realization. So everybody starts at their own pace and becomes more interested in all this at their own time. But yeah, it can be a really frustrating sometimes, but like I said, we need to accept reality, and any small step towards that is a win. And I hope one day it will be mainstream and people eating meat will be the ones who will be the rare ones.
So in terms of being interested in health and fitness, was that something that came with plant-based eating, or is that something already on your radar before that?
That's a great question, because yesterday actually I made a post on social media saying exactly this, how when I was 24, 25, when I went vegan, I didn't go vegan for my health, and I was already pretty much a gym freak. I was obsessed with sports. I've been doing sports since I was a really young kid, playing football, as we call it here, soccer, as you guys call it in the States. I was playing soccer from a young age. Then I was into martial arts, boxing, taekwondo, lots of different things. Gym has always been something I've been doing for almost 20 years now. So I went vegan just mostly was because of the animals and the impact that it has on the planet and the animals, rather than for my own health or as a way to get fitter or stronger. That being said, though, I have to say that I did notice an increase in energy once I went vegan. Once I dropped all that yogurt that I was eating, all that tuna, all that chicken, all those eggs, as most people do when they are exercising. You eat lots of protein from these products, which unfortunately means you're contributing to more animals being killed because you're eating more than the average person, unfortunately. But yeah, I definitely did notice an increase in energy, especially the first couple of weeks. I felt like I was 12 again.
I think that there is so much value in talking about that real journey that you took to where you are now, because, and I've talked about this with guests in the past, but I think because it's important to recognize that sometimes it feels like on the internet when we see, whether it's supposed to be taken this way or not, some vegans post and we're like, wow, it's like they've been vegan forever and they get it. And I'm a shitty person because I'm not there yet, or XYZ, or even some like weird, oh, if you do it for health, that's not enough versus doing for the animals, like all of this kind of mindless, not helpful infighting on some levels. But I went vegan in the beginning, it was for health. And then all the other dominoes fell into place as well, right? As I kept going. But it's interesting how there is so much pressure put on people to do things perfectly and to be like, I can't believe I'm not there yet. I can't believe I didn't do it. But I grew up hunting and fishing. Like I wasn't born vegan at all, like far from. And I want to try and make a point to not talk about that because I think it's like some huge important part of the story, but because it is a part of the story, and to be okay with that and to be like that existed. And then I changed my mind based on new information because I've gotten comments before. Once you get out of the city, you'll understand about hunting for food or meat. And I'm like, no, I get it. I got it.
Yeah.
I lived it.
We're in 2024 now. The excuse that we're doing it out of survival doesn't apply anymore. Hasn't applied for decades, for probably hundreds of years. When we look back at our ancestors, because people who are on social media nowadays, there is this trend. I'm sure you've seen it, of the ancestral diet, of eating the carnivore diet group, let's say, which is quite extreme, and they tend to compare themselves with our ancestors. But if you look at our ancestors, it doesn't make any sense to follow what they were doing. They were trying to get as many calories as possible to survive. Of course, if you're in a deserted island, or if you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to choose between a blueberry or steak, you would of course eat the steak because you would probably die if you chose the blueberry, because you wouldn't eat enough calories. That's definitely not the case now. You walk and there's a supermarket on the left, a convenience store on the right. You have 24/7 stores. You can literally buy food any time of the day, and we all should be very grateful that this is how it is, at least in most places. And eating as our ancestors doesn't make any sense to eat out of survival. Plus, our ancestors lived until they were 30 or 40, so it's definitely, we shouldn't try to be as healthy as they were, because obviously they weren't that healthy. Plus, just to finalize on this whole ancestral thing, because it always really gets me going.
Please, I've gotten these comments a few times lately again, and I'm just like banging my head against a wall.
Yeah, these people who are on social media and they're pretending to eat an ancestral diet and be like our ancestors, they're just choosing one small piece of our ancestors' life to, let's say, to mimic, which is their diet. What about everything else? You still live in a house with Wi-Fi, with lamps at night, with Netflix. You have a phone, you have Instagram, you have a car, you go to the doctor, go to the grocery store, you have a kitchen, you cook your food. So many other things that they do that don't align with their so-called ancestral diet or ancestral values, let's say. So personally, I find the people to be a little bit confused, maybe even to the extent of saying maybe hypocritical to a certain extent. So it doesn't make any sense to follow that diet. I do agree, though, that an omnivore diet can be healthy with a low saturated fat intake, high consumption of whole foods, high amounts of fiber, all that sort of thing. That can be, of course, health promoting. But if we look beyond health and nutrition, which is the environment, the animals, and all of that, the welfare of the animals, then of course it makes sense to go 100% vegan or plant-based, or whatever you want to call yourself.
I think that's so important as well. And I've posted about this in the past. I didn't necessarily go vegan because I hated the taste of all animal products, or was suddenly unable to eat this in some levels because of my mind, yes. But the idea that, yeah, there is some research. I think a lot of vegans aren't arguing that in terms of looking at nutrition and, like you said, low saturated fat and XYZ. It's when you bring in the other elements, which is important because that's how the world works, that then we look at those other choices. I think that's so important to remind people that is possible. That's, no one's kind of hiding that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of vegans, when they get into arguments or conversations with people who are, let's say, against being vegan, or who think you have to eat meat, I think it's important that they should acknowledge, am I going to have a talk about nutrition or about ethics and other things? Because they do get intertwined, and then people get really confused. So I think if we talk purely nutrition, which doesn't mean I don't care about the animals, but nutrition is one chapter of the whole thing. If we purely talk about nutrition, then of course you don't have to be vegan to be healthy. As long as you exercise, maintain a healthy weight, and like I said before, eat a diet low in saturated fat, high in whole foods, low in ultra processed foods, low in alcohol, you don't smoke, all these different things, of course you can be a very healthy person. But when we are talking, when we are arguing, let's say, with someone, or having a conversation regarding diet, as vegans, we need to acknowledge that. And then we can discuss, okay, now let's talk about the ethical part, not the nutrition. Nutritional wise, I agree, you don't have to go vegan. But when we talk about the ethical part, that's where things become tricky. And that's where it's really difficult to come up with, let's say, a counter argument as to why not to go vegan when it comes to how many greenhouse gas emissions you are producing with your diet, depending on how often you eat steak and how often you eat meat in general, or the welfare of the animals, how cruel the egg industry, dairy industries, all these things, they cannot be argued. That's why I think vegans should have two separate arguments. And in terms of the ethical argument, they'll always come up as a winner, as long as they know how to explain themselves, as long as they have done the research and they understand what they're saying and they don't get caught off guard. But when they talk about nutrition, as vegans, we need to acknowledge that you don't have to go vegan for optimal health.
Yeah, I think that's so important and is a reminder to meet people where they're at, which is a lesson, of course, for anything in life. But when we're talking about being vegan or talking about veganism in general, like I said, my interest in the beginning was I don't feel good when I eat dairy and I'm cutting it out more and more. And now I'm starting to look into why I don't feel good and tumbled into that world of I should be plant-based and then quickly tumbled into all the other things too. And yeah, that's such an important point.
And I could go online and demonize animal products for their health and their nutrition. I have done that in the past, but now as I'm becoming, I would say, more and more mature and more knowledgeable around the sphere of nutrition, the older you get, the more research you do, the more you read about there's always new studies coming out. So I think it's something we need to be careful with, even though you do have even some doctors, I won't name anyone, of course, but there are some people online who are constantly demonizing egg consumption or dairy consumption or meat consumption. And I understand where they're coming from, because for the lay person who doesn't, who will not go into research themselves and who will not read any of the studies, of course, as most people don't, they will listen to a person who has MD in their bio and they will believe anything they say. They won't even Google what type of doctor they are. Some of them are chiropractors, for example. There's all types of doctors nowadays. So anybody can talk about nutrition nowadays. I think it's important. I understand where these vegan doctors, let's say, are coming from, pushing the vegan diet as much as they can. But then you have other professionals who are scrutinizing them and, let's say, calling them out, as you say, on social media, and showing how they're incorrect about X, Y, Z, and you can eat eggs in moderation, and low-fat dairy can be health promoting. So it can get really confusing when you start listening to different people. I think choose the few that you trust, the few that use a lot of words such as "it might cause" or "seems to cause." So not the ones that have this direct X causes cancer, Y is it's poison, Z, you should never eat this. And I understand these people where they're coming from, because they're not trying to convince someone in terms of the nutrition. They're using nutrition as a way to convince them, but they're not being truthful in what they're sharing. They're cherry picking studies, as we say. Again, I understand where they're coming from, though, but it's important, I think, for each person listening to try and find the few people they trust, the few people who are, let's say, worth listening to, who know what they're talking about, who have done the research, who are not biased towards any direction, and then have other people that they will listen to in terms of the ethical part. Because you listen to doctors and to dietitians for the nutrition, you have to listen to Ed Winters, Earthling Ed, as people know him on social media. He's an amazing person to listen to, who will explain to you not the nutrition side of things, but the ethical side of things. I would say choose people to listen to regarding nutrition, and choose others who also know what they're talking about regarding the ethical part, so that you may hopefully get convinced and go vegan at some point.
That's such a good point, that there are certain people to follow for certain aspects of what inspires you about this. And that doesn't always have to be the same person. So I'm not going to tell you exactly about every single vitamin and how you can get on a plant-based diet. You can, and that's like beautiful, and people should be following you if they're not, because the videos you make are so helpful. There are different people to find different ways to be inspired about different aspects of this. But I do feel bad for folks, or have sympathy, or I'm not sure how to say it, get even frustrated for these people that want to be healthier, maybe are interested in veganism or plant-based living, whatever the motivation is. But there's so much bullshit online about all of it. And I feel this same way when people are trying to make more like earth-friendly choices, and there's so much greenwashing that people think they're making the right choice and they're not. How do you advise people navigate through that kind of stuff in terms of Instagram or online, or just figuring out like, how do I know if this is reputable or not? Like you started to touch on that, but how do you advise people to sift through that shit?
I would say, first of all, don't take your nutrition advice on social media. I would say there is probably the vast majority of people who are giving out nutritional advice, A, are not qualified, B, are talking out of their behinds, or C, they might know what they're talking about. And C, the percentage of people is very small. I've seen it. I've been on social media for many years, and I've seen countless of people giving advice who are giving the wrong advice, or they're talking about a field that is outside their scope of practice, and that can be dangerous. Myself, even in the beginning stages many years ago, when somebody would come and ask me a question, for example, about gut health or psychology, I would try my best and answer. But for many years now, I stopped answering when it comes about something that I don't know about, or I will direct them to somebody I trust on social media. That, okay, if it's about gut health, go to Dr. XYZ. If it's about psychology, here is an actual psychologist. I'm not somebody who's going to tell you what you should do when it comes to your mental health. I would say follow a very small handful of people. Avoid those who have massive amounts of followers, because more followers does not mean somebody is more knowledgeable. Avoid, like I said before, those who use really extreme wording, like really black and white, that this is good, this is bad. It's pretty easy to spot. You can understand who is trying to get likes and who is trying their best to give you as accurate information as possible. Sift through their bio, go on their website and see who this person actually is. Are they a chiropractor? Then why are they talking about nutrition? Are they just an ex-bodybuilder with 0 certifications? Why are they telling you what you should be eating? They're just talking about their personal experiences, their own biases, their own emotions, and they're not ever citing any research, for example. So there's a lot of red flags that you can spot. If you keep following me, I do talk about these red flags sometimes. There's also, I actually need to add into my highlights like a handful of people that people should follow, because there is a few that I personally been following for many years, and I don't try to find somebody new or somebody else or somebody with more followers. I stick to those people because I understand they are really knowledgeable, they're smarter than me, they know what they're talking about, they have the certifications, so I trust them no matter what they say. And there's this surge, this trend of podcasts and, again, sensationalist phrases and trying to sound extreme. And there's a lot of famous podcasts with thousands, with millions of followers. And it's really a shame, because when I see the type of guests these people have, or when I see what they say, they are promoting disordered eating behavior. They are promoting, they are basically not helping people. They might try, maybe that's the end goal. They want to help people, but they also want to make money. But at the end of the day, they aren't really helping people by telling you cut out all these different foods, and you shouldn't eat this at breakfast, you should only eat this at dinner. There's so many rules that they will try and impose on people, which it just, instead of helping people and simplifying nutrition and health, they are complicating it even more. And then one is contradicting another. Sometimes the same person might say one thing, and then after a month they say the exact opposite of what they just said, because they just don't they're, like I said, they're just sharing their opinion. They're not actually sharing what the data says, because it's not banana is healthy today, but a banana isn't healthy in a month. It's still healthy. It's always going to be healthy. So there's lots of red flags that you can spot on if you care. And at the end of the day, just to summarize, at the end of the day, I think people go on social media, mostly it's for entertainment. I highly doubt there is a single person out there who goes on social media to get, I don't know, advice on a certain topic. There might be, but I think most people, when we grab our phones and we go on social media, it's not because we want to learn something. We go because we want to be entertained, because we're tired, maybe because it's the end of the day, you're in bed, you want to scroll, you want to laugh, you want to relax. Right. You don't go there to learn something really useful. When you want to learn something, you go, you do your own research, you sign up for a course, you do other things. You go visit a professional, you don't go online on Instagram for that.
I'm wondering if you think that sometimes people are doing more damage by posting about, even it with good intention, about vegan food and nutrition. Like, I'm thinking about what is that balance of encouraging people with plant-based foods. I like to be like, I'm trying a new recipe this week, or this is what I've been eating lately, and have a kind of tagline of a reminder that here's a couple studies that show this is the optimal choices you can make. What is that line of if that's helpful or if that's not helpful for people, in your opinion?
Well, I think being vegan doesn't make you immune to BS. Lots of people who follow a vegan diet or vegan influencers, I see they still are saying things that are not true and are, promoting again eating disordered behaviors,
Right.
but is masked under veganism maybe. I think view social media first as entertainment and then as a source of knowledge. So by having that mindset already, you can sift through a lot of BS and you can find the people who are, again, knowledgeable, who know what they're talking about. Don't look at the amount of followers or likes and think that this person knows what they're talking about because they have lots of followers or lots of likes. Usually it's the other way around. Usually those with the most followers are those that are not, let's say, promoting something that is healthy, are not following the science, because what attracts social media is not the, let's say, boring scientific discussion and scientific claims. It's the sensationalist words and extreme, let's say, opinions that attract the most followers.
Right.
And take everything with a grain of salt. So don't take anything you hear as to be the complete truth and to be the only truth. Try to find several sources and see if they correlate. Most likely one will say one thing, the other one will say the opposite. So it's going to be difficult at first, but it comes down to what I was saying before. I think just have a handful of people. You can follow anyone you like, but keep most of your, let's say, followings, most people you follow for entertainment. Don't take them really too seriously, and have a really small handful of people, and you can even write them down so you can remember who they are, and have those as your trusted sources of information. And even those trusted sources of information, take everything with a grain of salt. Don't believe everything they say. So try to be a little bit skeptical. I understand it's not everybody is or wants to be an expert in nutrition. I completely understand that, and they just want to take the information from somebody and not having to think themselves. But I would say still, because you are talking about your own body, your own health, it's not something to take for granted and something to just say, okay, because somebody said, let's put butter in my coffee in the morning, I trust him, I'm going to put butter in my coffee, or coconut oil, whatever it's called. This I'm not going to call the name of the type of coffee, but there is this trend going around, and other even more harmful trends. So don't just take that exactly as it is. Just think a bit yourself, try and cross-reference it. Just Google, a simple Google search now can bring you lots of results, and there's a couple of websites that are more trustworthy than others. Most of them are not trustworthy. So when you're Googling, for example, don't just read any article written by anyone. Go just completely avoid all articles written by any, let's say, company or any individual, and just go through the studies themselves. There are a handful of people who write articles who are always referencing. So if somebody isn't referencing anything, that's always a bad sign. And when somebody is claiming something, but there's no, where do you get that information from? Even though I might not go and search for it, at least show me that there is some source. Like they were telling us in high school and in university, you need to have a lot of references, and Wikipedia is not one of them. So that's always a good idea to see if somebody's citing studies.
Do you think that's helpful then when others are, like I said, sharing, here's some ideas from what I ate last week, and here's why plants are amazing and a plant-based diet is best? I'm wondering, maybe I'm having a little bit of an identity crisis, but I'm wondering, I do this and I follow a lot of other people who do that aren't necessarily sharing food because they're saying, here's where you get your B12, vitamin D, and vitamin C out of this plant-based meal, but hey, this is really good, and did you know plants could be nutritious and they're best for the environment, XYZ, try going vegan. Do you think that's helpful, or is there potential harm there?
It depends what they're promoting. I would say the most vegan influencers, they do follow this whole food plant-based kind of approach, like certain, let's say, reputable doctors have been promoting for lots of years. So I think anytime somebody is promoting something, they got that information from somewhere. It's not information that you created yourself. You didn't figure out yourself that beans are healthy. You read it somewhere, or somebody you trust said it and you trusted them. So you can't know where that person got the information from. But I would say, in my experience over the years on social media, I see most people who are eating plant-based diet, they are promoting the whole food plant-based kind of diet, which in my honest opinion, I don't think can be harmful to anyone. Only when you start doing this elimination type diet, raw veganism. Every time I call out raw veganism on my stories or on my Instagram, some people get offended, but it's true. Being raw vegan is not healthy, and it can be really dangerous. There was a recent case of someone died, not because they were raw vegan, because they were under eating, of course, but raw veganism can lead to under eating because you have to eat pounds and pounds of food every day to meet your caloric requirements, and like where are you going to get your iron from, your calcium from? You have to eat I don't know how many nuts a day to get it, and it's not really a long-term thing is not really sustainable. So whenever somebody is promoting something that is an elimination diet, it can really be, it's a red alert, it's a red flag. I understand people who are really against alcohol and smoking and processed foods. And of course, I agree with them that, let's say, ultra processed foods, so donuts, cookies, pizza, everybody knows those things are unhealthy. You don't have to, it's not really difficult to know that. Or alcohol, everybody knows alcohol isn't healthy. But what I think the people who are really trying to promote healthy eating, what they end up doing sometimes is they promote a disordered eating behavior or an unhealthy relationship with food because of all these restrictions. So if somebody says, for example, I never eat gluten because it's inflammatory, or I never use oil because it's whatever, and instead I eat my nuts and seeds, would the person listening to them be eating healthy? Of course, you can go without bread. Of course, bread is an essential, or olive oil is an essential. But by excluding those things, will you be able to eat this way? Because we have seen a lot of cases of people who are raw vegan. So they went from one extreme, they were raw vegan, and then they went to a carnivore diet. So they are just following one, let's say, elimination diet. They go from one to another. So you can see the pattern there. They have a serious issue with food. It's not about eating healthy anymore. It's about following rules, and it gets really weird. So I would say, if you are eating a healthy diet, you should allow yourself to some of the unhealthy things that you have enjoyed eating since you were a kid. If somebody wants to have a beer on the weekend, go ahead and have your beer, because by not having that beer weekend after weekend, you start obsessing over it more, and who knows what's going to happen at some point. Or somebody who says, I'm never going to eat bread again in my life. Okay, I'm not sure you can do that unless you have a disease, a celiac disease. Of course, that's another conversation. But for the average person, there's nothing wrong with eating bread. I think we need to go back to moderation. I think it's something that it's not sexy to talk about. I understand, but it's something that it works. It's what works, and it's people don't want to hear that. They want lists of food to avoid and food that they should be eating and food to avoid. They want to follow rules, but at the end of the day, when you follow these rigid rules and you're really strict with your diet, it's not going to end up well. I've been there myself in the past. I had a disordered relationship with food, disorder eating pattern. I wasn't diagnosed with an eating disorder, but I did have a lot of red flags when it came to eating. This whole restricted mindset and then punishing mindset when you have something that you're not allowing yourself to. And this can be also somebody who's vegan. This doesn't apply only to people who are eating meat or dairy. You can be vegan and you can still have a disordered relationship with food. So really keep an eye out for those, for people who are saying to avoid this or avoid that. And why not confront them in the comment section? Ask them, why should I avoid gluten? Don't just take their word for granted. Why should I avoid gluten? And let's see what they reply. If their reply is based on scientific evidence and there are studies there, it might be worth taking seriously. But if it's somebody who's going to just tell them, because you're going to feel like this, or because it's bad, without any explanation, just a vague claim, then you know that they don't have a clue what they're talking about.
I like the reel you made. I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, but speaking to that, yeah, I had a beer and I stayed out late and partied this weekend, and I'm fine, and that's okay. And I'm glad I did that, because we also need to be social beings that enjoy our friends and our time. And I think that's such a good reminder, because you're right, so much of this conversation just ends up in extremes. What I'm hearing from you is that it can be damaging when people that don't know or don't have good information or don't share where it comes from are advising these really specific nutritional choices, versus someone being like, look at all my plant-based food, how yummy this is, you should try it and look into it yourself because it's pretty dope.
Yeah, you're trying to lead by example. I think that's great. We definitely need more people showing how diverse plant-based food is, how delicious it can be. That's why you have restaurants and you have lots of influencers, lots of food bloggers showing how amazing tofu can be. People think of tofu, for example, and they think it's this bland white cube, but you can make so many things with it, and it can be extremely delicious. I have tofu every day, for example, and it's amazing. Yeah, I would say that there is, of course, harmful information, but there is also really helpful information out there. And I think if you manage to understand the difference between them, then you'll be fine. And at the end of the day, if you do want to have positive impact in the world and you want to help animals and you want to help future generations, because this is what it is when you're going vegan, then I definitely recommend anybody who's listening who isn't vegan, I really encourage you to look more into it. Ask yourself the hard questions. Why do I continue eating meat? Why do I treat my dog the way I treat him, but I don't care about some pig in a farm? or some cow in a farm or chicken. Yeah, I think it's important to make that distinction. But yeah, when it comes to nutrition, like we said before, you don't have to be 100% vegan, although being vegan can be really great for you. If you follow a whole food approach, still have occasional bread, still have the occasional beer. If you want to have fry your vegetables in oil, there's nothing wrong with that. Be a balanced human being, but most of your diet should ideally be based off of whole foods. And for anybody who doesn't know what whole foods means, the fruits, the vegetables, the unprocessed or minimally processed foods, even peanut butter, if it's just peanuts, I consider that really healthy. Or we're talking about canned beans. Yes, they have been through some processing, but they're just beans. There's nothing in there. There's no preservatives, there's no sugar, there's no salt. Sometimes there is salt. Yeah, that's another topic of conversation too, the whole process versus whole food topic. Lots of people think anything that is processed is bad for you, but that's not the case.
I've seen such a wild increase in that lately online about the word processed being like the devil. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I see people, especially in this carnivore diet type of diet groups, demonizing, for example, seed oil. I've been seeing this for over a year now. They go to the grocery store, which is such a weird thing. I've never seen anybody here in Cyprus or in Portugal do it, thank God. I don't know where they do these things, but I haven't seen them in real life, thankfully. But videos on social media, people going to the grocery store and saying all this is processed, this is junk food, this is oils are inflammatory. They will come up with the most ridiculous claims without explaining the information, where that information came from. But if you look at Centenarian, if you look at we can talk about the blue zones briefly, because there's also been that documentary recently from Dan Buettner and was amazing. It was really helpful, I think, for the plant-based or the vegan movement, because it was showing how these people, like in the Mediterranean countries, like in Italy, there was one group in Italy, there was another in Icaria, which is an island in Greece here, very close to where I live. And people eat predominantly plant-based. They walk a lot. They still have wine. They still have olive oil. They still eat bread. I don't think excluding these things is going to magically make you live until you're 150. You still can have these things, and you should have these things, because I think what we often don't talk about is just how happiness and your overall lifestyle is connected to your health. It's not just what you eat and fiber and fat and where you get your fat from. It's our processed versus unprocessed. It's also if you're having a good time in your life, if you're enjoying this food, this company, and you're not stressing about it. If having a beer stresses you out, you definitely need to work on it. Or if you go to the grocery store and you don't buy oil because you're afraid it's going to kill you, that's not the case, and you need to really work on that, because I think being happy and having a balanced diet, it's really helpful, and it's really something that is a huge part of these blue zones. Like blue zones being people who live till their 90s and 100s, people who live decades or even more than the average person in Europe or in USA. And I think we should take them as an example of what we should try and do. I think being in a grocery store and being afraid to eat oil and following random dudes on Instagram who are scaring the shit out of you of eating certain things, that doesn't sound really healthy. Look at these people who live in these villages. They're walking all day. They're surrounded by friends, versus us now in Western countries. We're always in our phones. We don't talk to anyone. We're on our phones. We are arguing on our phones with random strangers. And that's not healthy behavior. We need to, yes, go on social media for sure. If you want to go on social media, go. Follow me and Carly, follow other good people, not these people who are demonizing things, and get your entertainment from them, get your also health-related, nutrition-related information from those you choose to, but also put your phone down and go outside and have a real conversation with people, because oftentimes I find that what we see on social media is far from reality. Sometimes I even wonder myself, I would be really interested in seeing an actual scientific study, looking at the people on social media and the things they say, the things they say they do versus what they actually do in real life. How many people are actually these really strict carnivores or only eating raw liver all day and raw eggs? I'm not sure many of them in real life do that. If it was many of them, we would have seen them. I've never seen anyone, never met anyone who says I'm carnivore. Yeah. So sometimes I think social media really doesn't show doesn't correlate to real life. It's really a bubble on its own, and it's important for us to get out of that bubble and go outside and explore the world and see what it is to be healthy. It's not obsessing over oils and bread.
For me, it's been this constant kind of rebalancing or reorientation to the power of Instagram as a tool for connection and for getting to work for myself and XYZ, and then also not becoming obsessed or overwhelmed or sucked into the trolls or whatever it is, and finding that balance, whether you're creating content or consuming content, is really important. And I think because now we've been in social media land for a while, people are, yeah, I get it, I should be on my phone less, blah, blah. But there's some real power to checking yourself on the time you get, myself included, I'm throwing myself in this category, the time you get sucked into these spaces, because there's a point where it becomes not connecting and more damaging for sure.
Yeah, the average person, I was looking at a study recently, the average person spends 3 hours on their phone every day. Can you imagine 3 hours a day? That's one whole day, almost a week.
Damn.
One of 7 days of the week, you spend them on your phone, just sitting there looking at that small screen. It's really worrying. And 1 in 5 people, I assume mostly young adults, so maybe teenagers, but 1 in 5 people, 4.5 hours on average per day and above and up. Can you imagine spending that much time on social media? That's why we are getting, I think, more cases of mental health illnesses, depression, anxiety, because we're constantly on our phones. We get exposed to things that we would never be exposed to if we were in real life. You go on social media and you see a cute video of a cat and you get happy. Then you go and you see somebody who has cancer and is dying and you get sad. And then you go see somebody who is naked in a grocery store screaming at you, seed oils are inflammatory. Then you see somebody else, and you're constantly getting these different, let's say, emotions and different reactions to these.
Yeah.
So many different videos. I've seen a video recently, I don't want to go into detail, but it really shocked me. It was really a horrible video and was one animal killing another. Somebody was there recording it. That was on TikTok. I deleted TikTok since then, and I'm never going to go back to it. I deleted it for the past year or so. But yeah, it's really, it can be, it's really damaging. Like you say, it can be really damaging. And then the troll, like you mentioned, I get lots of messages from people who are, I don't know, they're probably unhappy in their lives. I don't know what's happening in their lives, and they have to release themselves somewhere. Maybe they cannot release themselves and they cannot get angry at the people who made them angry. So they go and get angry at strangers online because it's easy. You don't have to do anything. You type something to a complete stranger. You're not going to look at him in the eye and tell him what you're saying. There is this quote from Mike Tyson that I like, which is, people say things on social media that they wouldn't say in real life, because in real life they would get punched in the face for it. So that's precisely what it is.
What a quote, but it's so true. Wow.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share with listeners that I haven't given you space to do?
I think lots of things. I think we should do another episode at some point in the future, because I feel I could be talking for hours about all these things. But
I know, I'm looking at the time. I'm like, God, I could ask you 1,000 questions about different myth busting and all of this stuff that has come to mind while we're talking.
Like I said before in the beginning, try to be really selective about the information and the people you choose to take information from on social media. Be really nitpicky and don't just follow anyone just because they have a huge amount of followers or millions of followers. Unfortunately, in my experience, those who have millions of followers are usually the ones giving out the most harmful advice. And it's really sad to see, because they have so many people following them who believe what they say, who will actually do what they say, who will buy their products, who will spend their hard-earned money into buying some pill or some stupid thing, or even worse, getting to a subscription on a subscription basis and pay this person every month a certain amount of money to get something that doesn't work, something that is completely unnecessary. Yeah, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be happy, choose a small amount of people. I would say most of the people you follow should be your friends. It shouldn't be random guys or girls on the internet trying to promote something or sell something, trying to convince you of something. Most of the people you follow should be your friends, should be stuff that makes you happy. You should go on social media, and you should leave social media feeling good. And the second thing is, since I am into health and fitness, and my job is health and fitness, a reminder to stay active and to try your best to stay active, doing anything you can. I would say going outside and moving is uncomparable. I think that's something that's going to really help people live a long and happy life. Doing something maybe with a group of people, socializing while you're at it, going out for a walk with somebody, joining a sport. You have paddle now, this mini tennis sport that's really trendy. It's really popular nowadays everywhere around the world. So join something, some group. And then when it comes to your diet, your nutrition, try to be really balanced. Don't try to cut out certain things. Of course, try to cut out animal products, because we're talking about being vegan here, but even if you do manage to cross that barrier, and I hope you do, then when you do go vegan, try to still eat a variety of food, because when you limit yourself to certain things, I've seen it with even with clients, I've seen it with people I know who go vegan and then try to limit themselves even more by cutting out, I don't know, processed food, gluten, oils, and it just makes it harder and harder. And I don't think it makes them happier. I think it makes them more miserable. Try to be as balanced as you can, and of course, go vegan.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for joining me again on the show. I can't wait for us to chat again, because I definitely think we should, and stay connected, because I really appreciate the work that you do.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode of Consciously Clueless. And for that, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, tag me when you share on social media, or share this episode with others who may be interested in the topic. Any sharing truly means the world to me. Join the community at patreon.com/consciouslycarly for bonus podcast content like smoke sessions with Consciously Cannabis guests, video versions of solo episodes, monthly live calls, one-to-one support, more lifestyle content, mindfulness resources, and more. Until next time, stay consciously clueless.